Hi, everybody, and welcome to A Mighty Blaze. Today, I am your host, Julie Gerstenblatt, back from retirement, here with Margaret Pinard, fellow Blazer, and I want to tell you a little bit about her new book, ORLA Rafferty Seeks Her Fortune. Yay, we both have our copies. Yay, okay. So, Margaret Pinard is a soul from the 19th century who finds it easiest to disguise herself by drinking tea. I feel like maybe Pinky Up, drinking tea, writing historical fiction, and popping off to the British Isles for research. She has published 5 novels and 1 collection of short stories. Her historical fiction work includes the Remnants trilogy, which follows the Maclean family from 1920s Scotland to Canada and beyond, highlighting the immigrant experience. Margaret has co-founded an indie book festival and is a firm ally of independent bookstores. She splits her time between Portland, Oregon and San Luis Obispo, California. Welcome, Margaret.
Thank you, Julie. Happy to be here, everybody. Hello, Blazers and everyone else who's tuning in. Lovely to see you.
And speaking of, when I read Portland, Oregon and California, I thought of the West Coast. And so I just want to make special mention to our friends in Southern California, the greater Los Angeles area. Our hearts are with you, and we are thinking of you during this really terrible, traumatic time. And we have done some work from the Blaze to raise funds that we will send your way. Okay, also to say that Margaret is a Mighty Blaze producer and fanner and occasional on-air host, and she's been an incredibly important member of our organization basically from the start. 2 or 3 months after we started this in March of 2020, Margaret has been on board ever since. She's really the heart and soul of this organization and has done so much for me when I joined and trained me. And now I'm happy to be here on the other side and talking to her author to author. You can also find her on YouTube, wherein our heroine rounds up her latest reads and gives her honest reviews. 'Tis searchable if you're looking for a specific book. Now, let me tell you, hi, Robin, hi, Renee, hi, everybody. This book is set in the UK, starting in 1833 and going a few years beyond. And Orla Rafferty Seeks Her Fortune is about a widow who must navigate the social, political, and financial issues of her time in order to ensure a better future for herself and her countrymen and women. That's my sort of elevator pitch for this book. Questions for Margaret, and if you have any or think of any as we talk, please put them in the comments, and our lovely fanner and producer, Kimberly Hensel-Lawrence, will make sure that we get them. So Orla is a smart and strong woman, really from the start. When we meet her, she is packing up her mourning gowns. She's been in mourning for a year, from when her husband died to the moment the book opens. And so we see her on the brink of this new time in her life, of this change. Certainly there was change when she became a widow, but now she's coming back into society. I just love that you picked that point to start her journey and to start us on the journey with her. As she gains independence and becomes quite savvy, there are problems along the way and pitfalls. But I feel like it's something that I could relate to as I was reading about her, because like if something happened to my husband, I wouldn't be able to like fix the Wi-Fi, much less handle our financial future on my own. And I can only imagine for a woman in a world that was set up by men for men, really with little regard to what women needed or wanted or any thought to them navigating the world alone. And so I was thinking, why did you pick Orla as a character? How did she come to you, and why that time period and this particular story?
Let's see. So I had a good answer to this at the launch party. So let's see if I can like condense it down. So the order of operations of this was that I was looking for some type of reform atmosphere. And at first I concentrated on the 1890s in Chicago, and then I was not really feeling the end of that story, so that's in the drawer. But I sort of went back and back and back until I found another political reform decade that had a whole lot going on. And that was in the UK. So I switched locales and decades, but still in the 19th century. And what I found was that people's attitudes around slavery were changing. People's attitudes around religious differences and rights were changing. People's attitudes around political reforms, such as who should have the vote, was changing. And so all these things I wanted to show to people as like how we got these rights in the ye old country. Mm-hmm. And so I thought that would be a great place. And then I just had to figure out which person did I want to be the carrier of those actions, right? And so it was a widow. So I have Orla as a widow because they have a teensy bit more power as women in that decade than you would as a single woman or as a married person because of couverture. You had no rights as a married woman. So then I thought, okay, well, how does she ease herself into this? And I thought, oh, she doesn't want to, right? No one wants to wake up if they don't have to. So it's going to be drawing her in because her comfortable sort of life that she's finally thought, okay, well, I'll just ease myself through is threatened. And so that is what embarks her on her journey at this crucial point. And she makes friends. And what I like is that there's some political things going on that she doesn't really know, but if you know the history, you can see happening in the larger picture, but also plot points like, I don't know, violence and secrets and, sort of more plot heavy things to make it more exciting. So I like to include both of those.
It's so great. And what you said about reform, obviously as you read it, you see that. And I learned so much. And I did write about, I said this is like an age of reform. There was so much happening. And it's sort of interesting because the way you have Orla learn about these things and wake up to this and start reading the newspaper and seeing, through meetings and conversations with other people, what was happening during the time. And also like her friends and neighbors, you have a really great cast of characters. She is certainly the main character. I mean, she's in the title. And so we know we're following her through this journey. But not only do you have a cast of great supporting characters, but you also start to include their points of view on things at some point too. So can you talk about first of all, this is gonna be like a 6-prong question. First of all, one, why did you care about reform? Like, why was that the backbone of the story for you? And then 2 would be point of view.
Okay. Reform. I am going to write this down because I'm notorious for losing questions. Okay, so reform. So I was really drawn to that as a theme because I feel like we're in an age that needs it, right? So if I go back to the progressive movement in the early 1900s, and I think, well, what was right before that? The Gilded Age. And I feel like we're in sort of a Gilded Age now where the inequality is so large and glaring that you can't help but think it's ridiculous and absurd. And how are we even surviving as a society like this? So that we need someone to come along like muckrakers and, sort of a new broom sweeps clean with that energy of reforming the system. So that's why I was drawn to that, because in my historical fiction books, what I really like to do is hold a mirror up and say, history is cyclical. We've all been through this before. Humans are the same. Like, let's learn from what's happened before. So that was why that was on my top of mind. And in terms of POV, so lots of characters with different viewpoints. And what I had to say about that before, I wanted to write it down before I forgot, was that some of the characters are historical figures and some are completely fictional. And what I found interesting was that there's evidence of some of these historical figures having their opinions change. And so when I wanted to represent a diverse set of opinions so that people could see people were all over the map, there was a range of opinions, I also wanted to show that people changed their minds, and that's allowed and, like, you know, sometimes even encouraged. So having people with different incentives, with different concerns and priorities was important, because that's how we understand each other in a political system where some of us have more or less privilege than others. So I thought that was important. And yeah, so different things happen to different characters, and I hope you can't tell at the beginning what's going to happen to whom.
Right. No. And who's a real, I didn't realize that any of them, I figured some were based on real people, but there are real people in the book, characters?
Yes.
They're real.
So the biggest character who's a real character is James Bronte O'Brien, who is a journalist from Ireland who came over to work with the unstamped press. So he was trying to write articles and get information out for people, mostly men, to get the vote, and trades to unionize and that sort of thing. And then went on to become one of the Chartists, so people who were advocating for a broad Bill of Rights in the UK environment of the time. So yeah, he was
cool. I did not know that. I just imagined him as, you know, one of your, but he like McNary is another one. So I was like, you know, thinking that that he could be real. He has a free lending library, and I thought about the role of libraries and what they would play. You're really good with so much historical detail to get us to really imagine the setting. So I will lead that into setting. Did you visit recently? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Let's see. So you mentioned something before I saw Robin's comment, and then it went right.
I know. I saw Robin's comment too, and then was like, oh yeah, Handmaid's Tale. I know.
Oh, libraries. Okay.
Libraries.
So, you know, I don't care about bringing this up. It's fine with me. You know, with the TikTok ban coming up, like there's a big way that we engage and form community that's going away. Well, what people did back in the day, back in the 1830s, for fun, instead of learning their news through an app, because they didn't have that yet, was go to lectures. So that's a piece of the daily life that she's just getting into. And so I think we should bring that back, and like reading libraries, lectures, sort of community talks. And I'm planning on doing some of that myself on my YouTube channel, and as well as in real life in my community in Portland. So 2020.
I love that. I mean, yes, because also we need to be hyper local. And I think to make change during this time in particular, like being with your community and speaking to one another about things other than just passing each other, like walking the dog, we do need to gather. And if we're not doing it on our phones, it's probably really good for us to be going back to that kind of form of community engagement, political and social engagement. I love it.
Yeah.
Let's do it, Margaret.
Yeah, exactly. So resilience dinners, if Leo is watching, and other things where we gather together and talk about stuff. So you did also ask about the research and visiting, and if you've read my other books or, you know, have followed my channel, you know that I love any excuse to hie off to the UK. And I did actually do a very quick trip last February while I was editing to get some more local research done. So I went to the Mitchell Library in Glasgow, and I went to a small regional library in the Three Tunes in Ayrshire. And so I got very detailed stuff about what those communities held on to, not necessarily the right time period, not necessarily the characters that I chose, but like little bits and pieces that I could form, you know, impressions with. And so that was really valuable. Also beautiful. So
yeah, that's great. So, okay, you go to the place or places to do research. What else is your research process like, and how does it inform your writing? Like, are you writing first? Are you doing research for months before you write? I mean, I know you've written several novels of this type, and this is the first in a series. So are you writing and research, you know, like tell me about your process.
So right now, actually, I'm I'm premiering a new process.
Yay. Okay, tell us.
Yeah, so normally I do a lot of immersive research, and I'll basically go from thing to thing to thing in terms of historical movements or concepts or people who did big things, and sort of go from rabbit hole to rabbit hole. And this time I'm preparing for book 2 in this series, because Orla Rafferty is a series, and we're going to be moving to Amelia's story next.
Oh, I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that's pretty exciting. And what I thought was, since I have all the materials, I have all the sticky notes, I have all the dates, like it's this big spider web in here. I needed to work on the plot outline and sort of look at the historical possibilities for this next character before I draft, which is new for me. I like just diving in. So the plan is this month to be doing sort of more what is happening at that time that I can tie in that's historically accurate, and then draft in March, and then I think May is when I was looking for like following up. So you kind of have to do a lot of, I don't know, like sewing metaphors is what comes to me, but I'm not a sewer. So like
you are a sewer of tales. Yes, Margaret.
So yeah, so just coming back and checking things and making sure that, like, if I embroidered on something, oh, there it is again, then I can make sure that that is in alignment with, you know, the historical period and everything. So yeah, fingers crossed.
Do you leave things blank if you don't know? Like if you're going to put the name of a street or a restaurant or something, do you like leave it like and go back to it, or do you go down a rabbit hole while you're writing and Google like I do?
No, if I'm in drafting phase, I'll give myself like 5-10 minutes.
Yeah.
And if nothing comes, like it's XXX. Like I just have to keep going.
Keep going. How much do you write a day?
I go in phases. So actually I'm not in a writing phase right now. And so the only writing I'm doing is book reviews and stuff for the website, stuff for the Patreon blog, and Blue Sky. So yeah, I sort of go in intense seasons and then sort of slack off and back and forth like that.
But when you're writing, what is your writing day look like? What is your setup, your desk, do you have rituals that you have to do?
I actually really like the Liz Gilbert school of thought as far as that goes, with like there's sort of a genie, and when they come you have to be ready.
Yes.
So I don't force it, because that just makes my brain confused, because it's like a little frightened animal who's trying to do one thing and is being told to do another. So when I am feeling like I've got enough information to start on the journey and I start writing, usually I'll try to do about 45 minutes of drafting at a time and just really get into the flow and not pay attention to other things. If I go beyond that, that's good. That's fine. When I was doing NaNoWriMo, I would write about an hour and 15 minutes and get my 1,700 words that way. And sometimes it was in the early morning, some years, and then sometimes it was early evening, other years. It sort of changes. So I try to
100 words in an hour and 15 minutes is a lot.
Yeah, well, that's because I'm waiting for the right moment. You know, you don't want to wait forever, because you don't, like, it's never going to be perfect. But if you establish a time and have a routine and sort of make room for it in your brain, I feel like then it will come and you can do it, and then you can just go back to other things so that it makes up a part of your life rather than just becoming an obsession.
So, okay. Hi, Trisha, who just followed Margaret on Blue Sky, and is a fellow Blazer as well. I feel like I love Big Magic, which you just referenced as the Liz Gilbert idea that, the muse will come and you have to kind of grab it when, it can pass over you and go to somebody else if you don't pin down that idea and take it and claim it. But I will also say that to me, writing is not just about when I feel inspired, but actually like work at the desk from a certain time to a certain time and to hit a certain amount of words, even when I don't feel like it, even when I'm not feeling inspired. But I try to trick myself into feeling inspired is like that the thing, like leave myself, like leave the scene where I like have another thing to do, so I'm excited to get back to the desk the next day and stuff like that. Because if it was just when I was inspired, I wouldn't I wouldn't finish a novel.
Right. It takes 17 years, right? Exactly.
It would take 17 years. How long does it take you? Like, how long did it take you to write Orla? And have you like finished her story? Will she be back in the next one? And like, how do you link this series together?
So it's evolved as I've written, right? So I have 6 books, and this is my 7th. And the MO before this was that it was about a year, and the drafting would come really naturally, and then I would go back and edit myself, sort of self-edit, which meant I'm looking for consistencies and sort of strength and intensity changes, and like language and historical stuff. And then I would send it to someone else, either a beta reader or professional editor, to do a developmental edit. And then when I got it back, I would either do one more with like those very detailed things and then proofread. And so that would probably take like 8 or 9 months. So then I work into that process, like travel for family, travel for research, other things that come up, like having to do projects for people in different locations. And laziness or sickness or any of those other things that gets built into the schedule too. I can't foresee that, so I just have to go with the flow, as I say.
Right. Who is like a favorite character, or two things, a favorite small character or somebody that you didn't know was going to be in the book who sort of surprised you and showed up? That will be the first, and then I'll ask the next one after. If there is such a person or a character that developed in a way that surprised you.
So originally the plot was like a 60-degree change, right? There was a workhouse, there was magic. It was a very
a workhouse and magic. Wow. I mean, I'm not in Chicago, but now once you're
Yeah, and so there was like bits of a character who was the manager, the proprietress of the workhouse that I really liked. And the little wisps of that character I gave to the very small character who takes care of Orla when she runs into some trouble and she has to go see a doctor. And so, there's like random bits that are, people won't know where they came from, but preserved. Yeah.
That's cool. And any facts that you discovered, like really juicy or interesting nuggets that maybe didn't make it into the book, or that did, that you want to like share something like that you're like, this is the coolest thing I learned from this book?
There's a lot of those.
Yeah.
So like one of there's a lot of historical information that I'm sort of building up to that I did not.
Yeah, you don't want to give away either. Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, the history is there. It's not a spoiler. Right. But
I know, but like for people like me, I didn't know all of that. Like you deal with even like merchants in India and cotton and wool and things that I did not know.
So like when I'm dealing with an empire, and it's a very familiar place to be in, this sort of place that considers itself the center of the universe and is running the world with a lot of fingers and pies. And for the person in the middle at that place that's unaware of like what it takes to run all that and exert all that power, I really liked just dropping some of those things into the story and, just seeing if people will notice. So we've got people so here's another real historical figure who's very slight in the story. Someone who went to the West Indies and sort of toured the plantations, took notes, came back and published his journals about how the plantations and slavery was being conducted. Because in this point, in 1833, we are seeing the bill go through Parliament that is going to abolish the institution of slavery itself. The trade has been stopped, but that hasn't stopped people who own other people from owning them. And so we're finally building up to that point. So he releases this journal. They talk about it a little bit in the book, and the law goes into effect, which is marvelous. Not completely, but within 5 years, slavery is done.
In
And
in the UK, and
in
still
the UK,
very far from
yes,
the US. Yeah.
yes. But someone from America, Frederick Douglass, comes to the UK on a lecturing circuit, I think a year or two after the book closes. And it's one of those things where I folded history a little bit for the journal comment, but I wanted to save Frederick Douglass's visit for maybe later with a different character. So that's the sort of thing I like to work in, and have a really famous person and their work that is valuable act on fictitious people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. People were commenting about how they wish we did learn more of, from the past, as we were talking about history and the role of historical fiction today, and maybe mirroring and showing us ourselves in a different, through the past, and saying, like, have we learned, can we learn, whatever. And whether we have grown and changed or not in some ways. But what do you want people to get, besides from maybe that as a takeaway? What do you want people to get from your book?
Okay, so Julie, I don't know if you're familiar with the thoughtful bro question, but I brought this up
Right.
before,
It's like similar to the thoughtful bro
How do
question.
you want people to feel at the end, right?
Okay,
So
yeah.
shout out to Mark Cecil, wherever he is.
Yeah.
So I really like taking people on a journey of discovery and awakening and learning about the world and the history. But I don't want it to feel too distant and too baked as a cake and outside, right? It's also baking in here in our hearts and minds. And so the ending is a really sort of knife twisting in the gut moment, because I want to bring it home that everyone is still struggling with this at some point. If we are going to live up to our potential and be in community and help others, I feel like we're all going to go through that at some point. So I wanted to show disappointments and triumphs both in the story. So yeah.
Great. Yes.
That's not a spoiler, so that's the best you can do.
Right. It's sort of like very realistic way to end the book, where you tie up a lot of things, but not everything one can be tied up, because that's not life, and because also you're writing a sequel, so there's room for us to go, ooh, what's next, in these people's stories too.
Yeah.
So Robin says that she was glad that you saved some pieces for the next book instead of trying to sliver it all into this one. And is the series 3, or do you know how many? It's 3.
I'm envisioning 3. Yeah.
Okay.
And so basically what I have in the original notes is sort of the family tree. It starts off with 3 brothers who are in Ireland and part of a failed rebellion, so they have to flee to not be stuck in jail. And then they're split up in England, and their children are the ones who we're following. So Orla is one of the children, Amelia is one of the children, and Fanula is the third one. She hasn't even been mentioned yet, but she's in here. So
great, cool. And I hear we have some great questions in the chat. So maybe Kimberly, you can present them. And hi, Sharon, I see you there. So let's see, we'll put up some questions from the audience.
Lovely to see some of these faithful Blazer names.
Yeah. Okay. How did you come up with the title and character names?
Okay. People were going to beat me with an umbrella for this one. So some of them are Celtic. Orla is definitely like an Irish name. Rafferty is definitely an Irish name. One of the brothers' names my mom read and said, I can't pronounce it. It's like, in America, it's pronounced Murrow, like the broadcast journalist. So I should probably give people a translation guide, but
right, Lennon, yeah.
Lennon, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think I like exploring old names and names that sort of give you a slice of the culture. So, just like people reading fantasy, they'll read it and they'll substitute something in their head that's just like, Yeah, that's that guy. I know that guy.
Right. Or when before people knew how to pronounce Hermione Granger, I was teaching 7th grade and kids would be like, that Hermione is really something. And I'm like, but now she's a household name. So everybody knows how to pronounce that.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I also like you had some dialect too. You had one character in particular who really spoke with a strong, like cutting off of the words, and I loved how you did that in the print too. And it came alive on the page, and I could hear him in my head.
Yeah. So in older books, I have had actual Gaelic words when it's Scotland, and for this one, it's accents, because I feel like what I was highlighting there was sort of the urbanization trend. So it's people who are living on farms and local communities where Gaelic is spoken, and then coming to the city, and it's a big shock, and like it's disorienting. Whereas in this one, we're in the city, we've moved around through small towns and cities, and it's a person who is firmly in English and didn't learn Gaelic or Irish. And so I don't have that in here, but I do like transcribing accents to give people the flavor of the locale, which I like.
Right. Yeah.
And the title, so I had a different title, and I asked Hank about it, Hank Philippi Ryan.
Yeah, Hank.
Produced 4 on Tuesdays for Crime Time. And she thought, well, that sounds like a great mystery. And I was like, oh, well, it's not really a mystery, so I'll have to change that. So she really helped.
Can you tell us what the title was? Or
it was something like The Perilous Fortune of Orla Rafferty. And so it felt too much adventure kind of thing. And so while I do like that, I changed it to more like someone's like walking out in a brisk pace, like seeks her fortune. And there's a little like pun or, double entendre, but less like it's going to be a pirate adventure,
Right. No, but seeks is a great word, because she is, and you see her like physically seeking and looking, but also like growing intellectually and, understanding. And that to me is seeking. So I think that really, really works.
Thank you.
So, okay. What else have we got from our audience, our nice, robust group? Why do you think, hi, Ellen. Why do you think you're drawn to some historical periods more than others? And what makes a period attractive?
Well, it's not the historical costume, I will say, because 1830s has some of the ugliest dresses.
I was going to say, what makes a period attractive? I feel like the Jenna Blum answer would be like, the length of the skirt is what makes the period attractive. Like, or like if you have hoops.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, so that is not the case here. And what makes a period attractive? Basically, it's like if I see a mention of something in some of the history books I'm reading, that gives me a spark or an inkling, and I sort of follow it and I go down that rabbit hole. And what it brings up is that there were a lot of people fighting for this thing that I'd never heard of before today. That makes me very curious. So it's my curiosity that sort of draws me into it. Especially for people who are fighting for justice for different populations. So that's my thing.
Yeah. Great. Go, Margaret, go. Like, and I feel like it's really interesting, because the more I get to know you, I see like the pieces come together, that you live that way too. And that you do stand up for, injustice, against injustice, and have like things you believe in and causes you support. Independent bookstores that you like will say, I support this, I do this, I don't go here, I'm not part of this because I don't believe in their mission or what they're doing. And so your characters are doing that too, and I love that.
Yeah, it's a little like Rose on the door at the end at this point, because like, what are you going to cling to at this point? Which person is not problematic?
Right. Right. You're like, I will take, I can hit, this is here. Okay. Oh, and so Sharon person asked, sorry if I missed it, but when will the second book be released? I just saw that in the comments. So
I'm still outlining at this point. So no research phase, no drafting phase, no editing phase. There's still a lot to go. I'm predicting early 2026, but that's the ideal. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Any other? Oh, and Sharon mentioned a lot of titles seem to be using a full name lately. Seems to be sort of a trend.
Nice.
but
Yeah.
she remembers the author's name. That's a funny comment. It's true, right? I can probably think of a few off the top of my head where, and the titles do seem to go through like periods where like not just genres, like the vampires were in, the dragons were in. Now it's like, romantasy is in, but also like titles that had girl in it, and then it became daughters or women or mothers in the title, and now it's like using a woman's full name.
I can promise you, you will never see a book by me that has a blank of blank and blank. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, gotcha.
So, yeah.
What do you like to read?
Ooh, well, I'd invite you to subscribe to my YouTube channel because I talk about books every week. I like to read at the moment a lot of nonfiction. I'm doing this reading challenge called Climathon. And for this year, that means 12 different prompts that have books, fiction and nonfiction, although it's going to tilt nonfiction, that deal with climate change and its effects. And that goes from injustice to oceans to activism to hope and solutions. So that is really great. I'm looking forward to that. And I think Kimberly already put up the comment, but if you look at my YouTube channel, coming up on Sunday, I have my first gathering of people talking about climate change and like grief. So it's like a first roundtable of a whole year of discussion. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, please check it out.
That's awesome. There's actually, I just do want to give a little shout out to our friend. I don't know that you know her, but Kate Woodworth, and maybe you'll want to read Little Great Island. Pub Day is May 6th, and
Ooh.
it is climate fiction. I mean, it is fiction, but it is set on Little Great Island, like on the coast of Maine, and it is about climate change and the effect on this small community of lobstermen and lobster women, and the economy and the homes there. And it's for somebody like me who loves Nantucket. I feel that very strongly because I've been following the receding, like the way the water is taking over the land on Nantucket. So Little Great Island, I blurbed it, so I read it early, and it's really, really great for your climate fiction list.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, I love that. So there's a lot of nonfiction. Renee, so I'll keep Kate Woodworth in mind. But also fantasy, mystery, romance, like basically everything else. I take it in turns and try to give everyone a turn.
That's nice of you. You're so egalitarian. I try to read nonfiction, but I read much more. I skew much more fiction. But right now, and I'm going to give a shout out to another book, and I have it right over here. There we go. Me leaving my chair. The Memory Palace.
Yeah.
Do you know it, Nate?
I've seen that before, and I definitely remember someone showing it off, maybe on a Mighty Blaze, but maybe a different.
Yeah, it's kind of like a new hot read, but I'm reading it with my book club, and it is short pieces. It's kind of like interesting for you and me because we write historical fiction, and when you come across a story that's so interesting, but it's not either interesting enough for you to spend a year or two writing a novel about it, but it's like its own short little story. And so that's what he has done. Short stories of the past. And like they're all different lengths, and he tells them in a like narrative nonfiction way where you feel like you get to know the characters. For example, a woman who made incredible sculptures out of butter.
Narrative nonfiction. So they're nonfiction pieces.
They are true histories of the past that he gives you that sense of that character and tells it like a story. And you learn all these things about like people or famous products, but you don't know the backstory to them. So that's a fun one. For us, history and if you like historical fiction and nonfiction, that's a good one. Ellen also recommends A Fire So Wild, a journalist who wrote about the California fires as a reporter and now a debut novelist. Wow. I mean, certainly top of mind for all of us. As I said at the top of the beginning of our interview, the wildfires. And as a person who wrote a book about fire, you know, my novel is Daughters of Nantucket, The Great Fire of 1846. And just the way a fire spreads through a community and the wind and things that are out of your control. And it's just a devastating situation. So that sounds like a book people either would want to read or maybe give it a little time and then read it. What else? Do we have maybe one more question? Thanks, Ellen. We're so glad you love the discussion. Wish I were more disciplined about sitting down when the magic genie shows up. Any suggestions? I'll have Margaret take it first, and then I'll think of some too.
So I will bring it back to community as inspiration. When I was participating in NaNoWriMo, I found it very encouraging and motivating to have other people chatting about when they were writing, how many words they got. We do this thing on YouTube called sprints, writing sprints, which means your body doubling, you sit down, you record yourself, and you have other people show up and say, hey, I'm writing for another half an hour. Okay, let's just do this silently. And so that's one of the encouraging things, that you're all in it together. So if you can get like a writing buddy, or, you know, just tune into someone's writing sprint online, that can be helpful. Or you can do it in person with a writing group, or at a cafe, or at a particularly motivating location. I don't know where that would be for you, Ellen. I don't know. Like maybe before you go to pickleball, you have to get so many words out.
You can't play pickleball, Ellen, until that 1,000 words are done. Yeah, I would say an accountability partner is really great, a great way to start. And I would be that for you, Ellen. If you want to start like next week, we can do that Monday. And I'll text you and tell you I'm writing for the next 3 hours. Hope to, you know, see you there, even if it's not like we're doing anything together, and we just check in. And you say, I just wrote 500 words and I'm off. It's a gorgeous day here in Florida. I'm off to play pickleball. But you have someone else, you know, that cares. Because otherwise it's like, what motivates you to care? I have a writing group. A lot of the Blazers are in my writing group. And when I'm starting a project, I am in the workshop actively writing pages, because 50 pages will be due to them by a certain date. And that motivates me, even if they're like, you know, it doesn't matter what form they're in, and you share them and you move on. We are not dissing your pickleball addiction. We admire the strength in your arms and the strength of your heart beating to go get that ball.
Yeah, it's taking an inventory and accounting of your life and realizing what brings you joy. Writing brings you joy, but you need a little scooch to get there. So how do you pair it so that you're triggered to do this one thing before you reward yourself with another? We're just treating each other like lab rats. That's the way to live nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, I have a Peloton bike in my basement, and it's not until I'm on it and I'm 5 minutes in that I'm like, this is awesome. I should do it more frequently. So you have to like push yourself, and then you'll be reminded, and then it becomes a habit. I light a candle, I read a poem, I check some emails, and I begin. And we want you there. And we want all, you know, Ellen and anybody else to join in writing. Okay, we have, hi, Jenna Blum, and holla to the workshop. So it's time for a giveaway, folks.
Yes.
And Ellen says she's in, by the way, so I'm gonna text you after this call. Okay. Hi, Jenna. Okay, I don't know how we do this. Woo. Spinning the wheel.
Plays or one of us, then we
we shouldn't be in it,
but we made comments. So
yay, Trisha Blanchett. T is the winner, and we are excited, and we have someone who just found your YouTube channel, Margaret. Yay. So you're gonna get some more love over there too.
Perfect.
So email us, Trisha at mightyblaze.com with your address, although we know where you live. So I think this has been a really wonderful conversation. I'm so glad I got to do this with you, Margaret. I'm so happy about your terrific new novel, Orla Rafferty Seeks Her Fortune. May we all be able to seek our fortune like Orla, and certainly you, Margaret, as you continue to write and see success and grow as an author.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Mighty Blaze. Thank you, everyone
Thanks,
watching.
everybody. Have a good day.